Hey everybody, I don't usually cover the TWAB, but this week's TWAB was extremely exciting for the PvP sandbox, so I wanted to touch on just a few things quickly. First up, you should read this thread on Twitter by Joe Blackburn, who is the assistant game director. Upcoming plans about Destiny PvP and future seasons is looking really promising. There's changes to Trials of Osiris, plus some other really exciting things. First up, there's going to be separate melee actions. So now, your charge melee ability won't be used by default if it's charged. You can now set an input to use your charged melee and set a different input to use your standard melee, like the Hunter Knife, the Titan Punch, or the Warlock Slap. They touched on long-term ability plans, just saying again that they do not want abilities to dominate the sandbox, but just to accentuate it, and that's always nice to hear. And now for the real meat of this thing, they've changed several subclasses, which is really exciting. For some general abilities, now you can start to break out of stasis freeze when you're mid-air, and the breakout animation and camera transition from first person to third person is shorter, so you can fight back a bit sooner. During sliding, you're going to get -20 to your stability stat and plus 15% to your shotgun pellet spread, and in addition, you're going to take 1.5 times more flinch. So the shotgun warriors sliding at you are going to have a much harder time closing that gap to one-hit kill you. The run and gun playstyle is pretty low risk and highly effective, so I think this is a great change, and it's only going to serve to make primary weapons more popular. Rally barricades from Titans are going to give you boosts if you stand behind them, including plus 30 stability, plus 10% range, and minus 50% flinch, which is honestly pretty huge. I think the shorter Titan barricade is going to become much more popular because of this. Titan barricades also go lower now, so it'll be almost impossible to shoot next to the bottom of the Titan barricade and hit the Titan's toes. And even if you want to Icarus dash through a barricade, you're going to take even more damage now. Moving on to Behemoth, you can now regular slide through crystals and shatter them. Shiver Strike is going to make you move 25% faster, and Whisper of Rhyme is not going to be as beefy. It's likely you will now be able to headshot a Titan with full Whisper of Rhyme overshield, so that's going to be great for PvP. Middle Tree Sunbreaker got a little bit of a buff. When you throw your hammer, it's going to hang out on the ground a bit longer, and it's going to do more damage to PvE combatants. Top and Bottom Tree Striker got a little bit of a buff, so the slam detonation radius, your bigger attack when you're in the super, is going to be about 14% larger, and the damage from enemies that are outside of the one-hit kill range will now be a little bit more forgiving to you. So enemies that were once taking less damage by only being a couple of feet away from you are now going to take more damage because the fall off has been reduced. You're also going to be able to use the slam attack a little bit more often because the super cost was reduced by 3%. Middle Tree Striker, which is already quite powerful with Thunder Crash, got a little bit of a buff because now Inertia Override, which is where you slide over ammo and you get a boost to damage, is now lasting 2 seconds longer. And you're going to get a little bit of melee energy back whenever you slide over an ammo brick. Ward of Dawn was a little bit too good, so Top Tree Sentinel is getting a slight nerf. Now, if you drop a bubble on top of a boss, you're actually going to take 7 times more damage, starting at 0 resilience, that is. So it'll actually be considerably less for people running normal resilience stats, like 5 or 6. The Revenant Hunter got a slight buff. The Tornado is now going to move about 20% faster, and once the Tornado touches a boss, it's just going to stop and hang out on the boss. The Shurikens got buffed again, so the tracking is increased by 10% as well as the speed. Middle Tree Gunslinger got a slight buff, so the knives, those 3 that you throw all at once, are going to do 1 second more of burn damage. Top Tree Gunslinger, which is the 6-shooter gunslinger, now has less damage fall off to the golden gun, so when you're farther away from enemies, you won't have to fire 2 shots to kill a Guardian as frequently. All of the Arc Striders got a little bit of a change. All Arc Staff supers will now last 4 seconds longer, and the heavy slam attack when you jump up into the air and slam your staff down is going to be 1 meter larger, so you're going to do a little bit more damage to enemies that are farther away from you. It got 33% damage buff in PvE, and for Top Tree Arc Strider, your Deadly Reach melee, where you get increased range, is going to be a perk that lasts 2 seconds longer now. For Middle Tree Arc Strider, dealing damage with Tempest Strike now triggers Lightning Weave, and you can extend that by dealing damage with any weapon. Spectral Blades got a little bit of a nerf. You're going to take a little bit more damage during your super, and you're going to take 2% more damage when you're invisible. So I'm curious to see which snipers and weapon combinations can now kill invisible Spectral Blades, because they are kind of threatening. Shadebinder got kind of a major nerf in my opinion. You now have to freeze and shatter twice to defeat Burning Maul, Fist of Havoc, Sentinel Shield, Nova Warp, Arc Staff, and Spectral Blades. So those close range supers are going to be much harder to kill if you're a Shadebinder. Now for the big one. Top Tree Dawnblade finally got a nerf 2 years later. I'm just going to read this one straight out. Top Tree Dawnblade TTD is straight up dominant in PvP, so we're taking some measures to make it slightly less so. Celestial Fire will now take a little bit more accuracy to get full damage. Having access to 2 back-to-back Icarus dashes gave this subclass too much positioning flexibility, allowing for quick, long-distance flanking and evasion, and when playing against a Top Tree Dawnblade, it's of course hard to know if they have an Icarus dash ready to go, even if you just saw them use one. We're hoping this change makes playing against a Top Tree Dawnblade more predictable. We want the identity of TTD to be found in aerial combat, so we're doubling down on Heat Rises. We hope this change makes Heat Rises more accessible to players of all skill levels. Celestial Fire reduced the tracking cone angle. The arming shape proximity detonation now shrinks over time. Reduced the detonation size by 1 meter, and damage falloff increased at short distances for Celestial Fire. This is the big one. Icarus Dash. It now provides 1 air dodge every 4 seconds, and while under the effects of Heat Rises, it's been increased to 2 dodges every 5 seconds, so it's a little bit less forgiving during Heat Rises. So what I'm reading here is that you can no longer back-to-back Icarus Dash. You have to wait 4 seconds between every one of them. I think this is going to have a massive impact on the efficacy of Icarus Dash in PvP, and I'm really happy to see a nerf finally coming through to this one subclass that has been S tier for 2 years. Heat Rises is now going to last 5 seconds longer, and you're going to get more time on Heat Rises if you're killing enemies while in the air. Also, your location now appears on enemy radar when using Heat Rises. Okay, that's very exciting, but we gotta move on. For Well of Radiance, you're going to take more damage from bosses, much like the Top Tree bubble, but Resilience is going to help you out more. And now, while you're inside the Well of Radiance, you are going to take 20% less damage from enemy players, and you cannot be frozen or slowed, which I think is so cool, because you're literally standing in like a pit of light and fire, so that makes sense. It would just melt the ice right away. However, your Well Sword, which is giving you all these buffs, can now be frozen and shattered by stasis, even if you can't. And then a little bit of a buff, you're going to get a little bit more damage when you drop that melee on somebody on Middle Tree Dawnblade, and it's going to last a little bit longer. 5% more damage, 3% more duration. Bottom Tree Dawnblade finally getting a buff. There's now a reduced delay before your Phoenix Dive starts, and you can input a direction for your Phoenix Dive, so that's super cool. I think this class is probably going to see more usage. Also, when you melee somebody, or when you kill a burning target, they're now going to explode and burn other nearby enemies, which you can chain and keep chaining. Now for another big one, Middle Tree Stormcaller or Chaos Reach is finally getting a nerf, which is pretty epic. And they do mention they might further nerf it too, which is cool. Increased beam environment collision size to better match the collision size with damage size. So now I think it's just going to be a little bit more predictable about where the beam is and where it's going to be doing damage, including that the beam damage radius, so like the radius of the thing between your hand and the end point, has been reduced by 20%, and furthermore, the endpoint sphere of damage happening at the end of the beam, that radius has also been reduced by 33%. Bottom Tree Stormcaller got a little bit of a buff. Arc Souls are going to last a second longer, and they're going to fire a little bit more quickly. Also, when you're near allies, you're going to get a sprint speed bonus, which is really nice. And also Landfall got an improvement, so you're going to fire 5 arc ground projectiles on your cast, so hopefully that makes it easier to kill more enemies in a larger radius when you activate your super. Finally, Nova Warp got a buff. This one is notorious for being good in the past, so they probably didn't want to go too far with it. Now you're going to do 73% more damage in PvE, you're not going to be slowed down while you're charging your explosion, and you're going to do an explosion when you cast your super, so that should make it much better. In addition, Handheld Supernova got a 100% damage buff versus PvE combatants, and you can hold it for about 1 second longer. Furthermore, they mentioned that there's more changes coming that are smaller to the subclasses, and they just didn't want to bug down the list. We'll have to check out the patch notes when the season actually launches. They also made a slight change to the powering up stasis experience, so Guardians who buy Beyond Light are going to have an easier time understanding what is required of them to complete quests and fully unlock stasis and all of its abilities. At the end of the TWAB, there's some nice artwork featured from the community and a shout out to the 7th anniversary of a fundraiser that Bungie is competing in. You can get an emblem if you donate. They touched on crossplay names a bit, just giving people a friendly reminder that your Bungie name needs to be compliant with their code of conduct. Otherwise, it'll be changed to Guardian, and you can't change it for potentially several seasons. And for Steam players, your profile name will be your Bungie name, not your account name. So don't worry if your account name was like Mountain Dew Lover 69 from middle school. Whatever you have your profile name as now will be switched to your Bungie name, so you're good. Just make sure it's within code of conduct rules. They also put in a friendly reminder to claim all your rewards before the seasons end and turn in your Vanguard tokens, because those are going away. Alright, that's the end of the TWAB. I just wanted to get through quickly and mention the things that I think were the most interesting. There's a link to it in the description if you want to see more detail. I don't usually read the TWAB, but if this is something that you're interested in me doing, I'm more than happy to. Alright, bye. Have a great day.